screen now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So BCP and DRP in very simple terms, let me say, some of your houses may have generators, right? Some of you may not. If there's a power failure at your house, you'll be in dark. So the BCP arrangement is you have a backup, a generator. So just in case of a power failure, you can quickly switch to a generator so that you can continue to work without a disruption. So that is having a BCP in place. So let's say the power failure happens because there was a fire in your kitchen, some electrical switches got fired. So DRP is fixing those places where you got a issue. So disaster recovery. Once you fix your switches, you can come back to your normal power supply from the generator. That is very simple terms if you want to understand the concept of BCP and DRP, right? BCP is having something in place to make sure that the business runs smoothly irrespective of disturbances. DRP is how to reinstate the damage done to a disaster recovery plan. So DRP is technically a part of BCP. Hope that clarifies. Now, another, we are looking at assessing external sources of risk. Another one is business process analysis. We analyze the business processes. So that is basically you examine your high level business processes and then identifying subcategories, sub-processes in that can have an impact on the external processes, right? So there you will have to drill down to different levels and what element of our business process is going to be affected by the external processes. Say for example, in very basic example, let's say you talk about disbursing a loan, right? When you're disbursing a loan, you have internal processes that need to take place. There can be a dependency on your interest, right? The interest component that is coming out from the external sources, the economic factors or political factors or whatever. So in the loan process, the interest component determination part has an impact on the external forces. So likewise, in all the business processes, you drill down and identify where it affects. That will help you to make this assessment. Now we discussed about the external sources. Now let's move into internal drivers of risk. What are the internal drivers? First one is strategic risk. We saw this strategic risk in the diagram as well. So strategic risk, what is strategic risk? Now, when you say strategic risk, it is a little broader definition if you go to the definitions. It's basically looking at current as well as prospective or future, right? Earnings and your capital or the balance sheet. So you look at the risk on your current and future earnings and current and future resources, so the balance sheet. due to the changes in the external or the business environment, business decisions or improper execution or implementation. So in simple terms, this first part, business environment and decision or the crafting of the strategy are interconnected. So your ability to assess the business environment accurately and predict it, plus identifying the most suitable strategic move or strategy is one element. The second element, having identified that strategy, how effectively you implement it. So therefore, the strategic risk is twofold. One is whether we have the right strategy. So having the wrong strategy is one risk. Second is, have we got the implementation right? That means, have you executed it right? So having the right strategy and not having the right strategy and not being able to execute it are the two aspects of strategic risk. So that will result in negative consequences, that is strategic risk. Right? That's why I have said design and execution. Design means the strategy, execution is how you implement. Then we have the operational risk. So operational risk is a major risk both in financial services institutions as well as a normal business. So it is the risk of loss resulting from inadequate or failed, right? Remember, inadequate or failed. So it's not about the absence. You have a process, but it is not adequate to cover the risk. Then you have a process and it fails, right? So the risk of losses arising from inadequate or failed processes, people, systems, or external events. So there are four things: processes, people, systems, or external events. So that will be discussed in detail later because we have a separate chapter on operational risk. We'll be discussing that in detail when we go there. So remember, we are discussing this operational risk now, not only for the banks, we are talking about any business, you can have this operational risk. Then we have financial risk. Right? Financial risk. So the financial risk is broadly, right? You talk about financial risk at a basket risk category. So this is broken down to subcategories. That means it includes the credit risk, market risk, and liquidity risk. So all these three risk elements are generally included in financial risk as a grouping or bucket. So credit risk we know, right? That is the risk of loss by the failure of your customer or borrower meeting the obligation. So we, in this course, we use a technical term. We don't just say borrower. We talk about counterparty or issuer, right? The other party or issuer of debt instrument. So failing of both or either of them is considered a risk. Then we have the market risk, that is primarily in terms of change in value, right, of your assets that will have an impact. Then we have the liquidity risk, that is in not having sufficient cash or cash equivalent to meet your obligations that we all know. So this is in a broader sense we discussed in any organization as financial risk, right? These are the theories. So this is a broader categorization, by the way, as I told you. And there we discussed in the previous case external risk. Now we discuss internal risk. And when we discuss the external risk, we discussed how we assess external risk, several tools. Now, when you look at internal risks, there are different tools or techniques we use to assess the drivers of internal risk. That means what causes the internal risk. Risk assessment workshops. Basically, you get into a room and then you analyze different areas, brainstorm, and then come up with the areas where you have risk. Then we have another party who is relatively better informed and knowledgeable of our processes and the business. That's the external auditor. You can have a discussion with the external auditors to understand their risk factors. So some of the risk factors generally are found during the audit process and they sometimes include in the management letter as well. We can take it from there. Then we have stress testing. What do you mean by stress testing? I think most of us do this in the bank, right? Stress testing. Stress testing. What do you do? Once we do something, develop something, right? Maybe your capital plan or any forecast, predictions, plan. So what you do, we change those variables or the factors and see what if the interest rate comes down by 10%. Then you look at the impact, right? So what if the particular variable goes down by this? What is the impact? So likewise, we look at what if the exchange rate increases by this? So we have a plan, we change variables and see the impact. That's the stress testing. Then we have another one called scenario analysis. In the scenario analysis, what we do, we construct scenarios. What are scenarios? So the difference between stress testing and scenario testing, right? More or less the exercise is the same. What we are doing is we are changing the variables and see what will happen if this is the case. And see if that variance is something that we can accommodate or whether we need to be aware or prepared for that eventuality if it happens. So the difference between stress test and scenario analysis is, in a stress test, what we do, we change only one identified variable at a time, one factor at a time. Right? What if the interest rate goes up? What if the exchange rate comes down? So you change only one item and then see the impact. In a scenario analysis, what we do is we change multiple factors. We change several factors together and see the impact. So here what we do is we construct a scenario. We construct a scenario, right? So for example, one scenario is that now we have got the pandemic again. In the first wave, we went through the pandemic. So we identified actual situations. Maybe you couple of your branches had to be shut down because of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So then you develop a scenario, okay, 50% of our branch network will have to be closed down. That's a scenario. So when you do that scenario, what are the variables getting affected in our forecast? And change all those variables and then see what's the impact. So generally when we do scenario, we identify different scenario, best case, worst case, normal case, likewise, or a specific situation, right? We can build scenarios generally on 3 grounds. One is we look at our past experience we have gone through, right? We had a experience from pandemic. Now we can construct a scenario based on what we have gone through in the past, identified those events. The second basis is you have not gone through that, but you have seen someone else going through that. Right? You have seen another bank in another country going through such an event. Now you assume, what if that happens to us? So that is the second way. The third basis is you have not experienced, you have not seen happening elsewhere. You imagine, you visualize a possible scenario and then see what if this scenario takes place, right? What if another planet comes and hit us, right? So you can think about something that you have never experienced, you haven't seen others, but you imagine a possibility. So then you can construct that. So that is scenario testing. So these things will help you to assess based on the impact of your estimated scenarios or whatever the assessment you do. You can make an assessment how comfortable are we or whether we should be prepared for anything in the future. Right. So there is a interesting point here. When we look at business risk drivers as internal or external as two separate aspects, in reality, there's an overlap. Because external factors can influence internal factors, and then there's a collective impact on the business. Right? So, for example, there is a example given in the book. I have extracted the same thing. Let's say when you want to develop a new product, right? And you want to launch new one. So then that includes these aspects. That means when you make an assessment, you need to look at these aspects when you assess the risk. A gap analysis of the firm strategy. Are we doing the right strategy? Is the development of this product is within that, right? Is there a possibility that this you are developing the wrong product, and what is the risk out of that if that's the case? Right? Then you need to do market surveys, because you need to be sure that the external demand is established. You need to make an assessment and see whether we have identified that demand realistically. Then we can look at if we are launching something that our competitors have already launched, how are they faring in the market? So can we get an insight from there so that you are prepared, so you know where we stand. So then the R&D aspect, right? You look at the external stakeholders, whether there's a possibility that our product will get rejected. So how can we mitigate that? And also in the current context, the marketing domain has evolved over a period. Now the current level we are is what we call experiential marketing. That is, in current context, people want to taste it before you buy it, right? So therefore, we need to allow the customers to first taste and give their feedback, improve, and sell. But unfortunately, in the banking sector, it's not easy to do that. When you sell some, new biscuit, you can go to a supermarket and let people taste it and see what they say. But in a banking setup, it's not easy to do that way. But still, you need to do a test marketing. So, how do you do a test marketing in banking products? Any idea? So if you go and
typically conducted internally.
Product fails. Sorry. Yes.
It's typically conducted at internal, giving it to internal employees.
Surveys.
Yes, go ahead.
Surveys. Questionnaires and surveys to a selected number of customers or maybe non-customers.
Now these questionnaires, etc., those are pre-marketing or pre-sale options. What we are looking at here is that you let the person experience the actual product, right? And then fine-tune based on the feedback, right? So as someone rightly said, Ishant, I think, right? Rightly said. So the best place to do the test marketing is your employees, right? Before you launch the product to the external customers, you release it to internal customers or internal employees and see what they have to say about it. So then correct it and then go to the customers. But this is an interesting thing I have seen when I look at some certain banking organizations, when they issue new ATM cards or new mobile apps, online banking products or whatever. The first thing I ask in the management is, how many of our internal employees have bought this, have subscribed for this facility? Sometimes we talk about increasing our reach when our own employees have not subscribed for it. So the first thing is to give it to your own employees, because they will not go and talk bad about you outside, right? They will not expose you because they are internal. If they expose it, they also get the blame, or they also are getting that negative sentiments. Therefore, best place is internal employees, then do that. Right. Then we will look at some of the risk terminologies we need to understand as we move on. It's not a comprehensive list, but we will look at some of them one by one, and we will learn few more as we move forward. Right. First, risk culture. the system of values and behaviors present throughout an organization that shapes this decision. Now, take the risk part out, culture. So culture is, in very simple terms, is what? Culture is the lens through which you see the world, right? It's the attitude. So how you define your culture in the organization, how you let people feel risk, how you let people respond to risk. So that is something that we need to create in an organization. We are discussing this in detail later, but it's very important when you set a culture in an organization that gives them the perspective. For example, you see how we have transformed the culture, how to respond to the pandemic. Initially, we have created a culture among the public that this virus is a very dangerous thing, right? You have to be careful, don't go out, stay home, right? You saw, even with a very little number of deaths and small number of cases, people were vigilant. They didn't want to take a chance. So lately what happened was, we have, with various things going around, media, social media, and how you interpret, how you analyze things. So little by little, we gave that attitude to the people. This is not something to be worried that much. Now, they have relaxed their tolerable level. That's the same that thing in an organization, in a bank. When you let your employees to relax their risk consciousness, they don't take things seriously. For example, when you talk about anti-money laundering, right, AML. So if you have a strong culture, your employees are vigilant. Whenever a customer comes, they start observing the customer as if a thief has entered to the building without them knowing it. They will carefully watch their behavior. They will go through their credentials. They will do whatever the validations, all that they will do, because they have a strong culture. If you have a relaxed culture or relaxed risk appetite, then they will not pay their attention to that extent. So how they act, what actions to be taken, those decisions are driven by this culture that you create in an organization. Then we have something called conduct risk. Right? What is conduct risk? We have heard of this term. This is coming from, this is our UK system. Financial Services Authority is the regulator. From there, they get this concept. That is, without you practicing proper risk mitigation measures, your bad behavior can impact the customer in the end. Right? The way you behave will impact your customers. Your conduct will affect your customers. Your negligence will affect customers. So that is, in various levels it can happen, right? So when you don't do your job properly, when you don't consider the customer's exact requirements, customer's needs, customer risk profile, so then you go and give the wrong product, maybe on wrong terms, and then it might end up customer going bad as well, and then you also suffer. So there can be other aspects as well to this. Then we have risk appetite. Risk appetite is what? That is what you decide as the amount of risk you can bite. Right? And this is one of the main differentiators how different banks will grow their loan book. Right? The banks with higher risk appetite, that means those who think we can bite more, we are willing to accept more, they are aggressive, they will go and promote their loans. So they will go and expand their loan book, taking relatively a higher risk than the other players. If your appetite levels are low or you are risk averse, you will play safe. So that will determine how much you boost your balance sheet, because those who are having higher level of risk appetite will go and boost their balance sheet. At the same time, they are running into the risk of a bigger damage in case of realization, but that's what they think they can buy. So this is what happens with finance companies versus banking system even, right? Finance companies go and lend to certain segments that banks don't want to touch. But at the same time, there is this risk return trade-off. They go and bite a higher amount of risk. At the same time, they charge a higher fee from the customer to compensate that. Then we have inherent risk or the gross risk. That is, you look at the risk assuming that there are no controls, right? Without considering the controls, what is your risk? That is called the gross risk. There's no mitigation. So then we look at residual risk, or we call the net risk. So having considered the controls that we have, what is the net exposure? Because we have some controls to prevent that risk happening. So when that comes into play, the actual damage is not as big as or as severe as the gross risk. Then we look at risk profile. So that is in terms of what is the overall risk that you are exposed to, right? So it's not only one aspect, you're looking at overall risk exposures and then what kind of a risk profile that you have. Then we have risk mitigation. What is risk mitigation? Risk mitigation is basically once you identify the risk, what are the techniques you used to reduce? Now, if I go back to the definition of risk, how I define the risk? Risk is the product of likelihood and impact, right? Likelihood, that means how probable that this will happen, the chance of occurring that materializing, right? Impact is the damage in the event the risk get materialized, what would be the damage? So when you say mitigate, what we are doing is we're looking at techniques to reduce either of the two, because risk is the product of likelihood and impact. Then we look at measures or techniques to reduce the likelihood or reduce the impact. So techniques. Insurance policies. So can someone tell me, having an insurance policy, which part of the risk you address with this? Are we addressing the likelihood or the impact?
Impact.
We address the impact, because having an insurance is not a guarantee that you won't hit a wall, right? If you have a vehicle, if you are driving, so insurance cannot stop you hitting a wall. It can reduce the damage or financial loss. Sometimes when people take insurance, they think they get a magical cover around your vehicle. You will not meet with an accident, there's no harm. So then there's this tendency, when you have an insurance, you drive fast or reckless. So that there's a false assurance there. So that happens in organizations as well, in businesses. When you get certain mitigating controls, you get a false assurance on things without knowing what it actually does. So insurance only looks at the impact, not the likelihood. Then IT. So when you upgrade IT systems and processes, so that you can mitigate the operational risk. For example, when you have a people risk, one thing you can do is there can be human errors, manual errors, whatever, typos. So you can automate. So you improve the systems, then you can address the risk, or you can mitigate the risk. So with that, what do you do? Is it likelihood or impact?
Likelihood.
This one, you are addressing the likelihood. So by this, you are reducing the chances of materializing the risk. Then hedging. Hedging, likelihood or impact? No idea?
Impact, no?
Impact. Because hedging is an independent instrument you are arranging to set off the impact of another transaction or event. So it will mitigate the impact. Holding collateral against the credit risk when lending to a third party. So collateral, likelihood or impact? Collateral? What does it do?
Impact.
It's
When
impact.
you have, sorry?
Impact.
Impact. Because you can't, by having a collateral, you can't reduce the risk of business running into a loss. It will reduce the damage. Right. Then we come to risk in finances. All this time we were discussing about risk in general terms. Right. Now we move to risk in financial services. So here we are looking at only the differences, right? How the risk in financial services is different from risk in a normal business. So we have specific risk categories you find in the financial services sector. We have operational risk, credit risk, liquidity risk, funding liquidity risk. We will be discussing all these concepts as we move on, because there are separate chapters. Don't worry about those words now. Interest rate risk, because these risks you don't see in any other businesses in general. Now, this diagram explains how the risk in financial services is different to risk in other industries. Now you can see on the left hand side, you can see the other industries. You can see the financial services industry on the right hand side. So the global risk spectrum means that the overall risks that you need to face in the global context, external environment. So it won't change. It will be the same for both. Then strategic risk, operational risk, whatever the industry you are in, you will have to face it in a similar way. There's no difference based on the industry. But what makes the difference is the credit risk, liquidity risk, market risk, and investment risk. So these four broader categories of risk, you can see the financial services industry has higher proportion of those risk elements than other industries. There are certain industries which doesn't have this. For example, if you are a hotel, if you are a manufacturing company, you don't have credit risk because you don't lend money, right? So therefore, there are certain industries, certain risk factors are not applicable at all. Another aspect we look at in the financial services industry is that there is complexity. They have complex products, processes, and a lot of variables involved in the financial service industry. And there's no physical product, right? So it's all concepts or services. When you say deposit, it's not the passbook is not the product, right? It's a construct or virtual thing. This passbook or other document is just a evidence to prove that this product was bought or this product is with you. Therefore, there's no physical product. As a result, most of these products and services are online, in a system, or in invisible form. Therefore, is highly vulnerable. Then certain products, lifespan is in decades, like lending products that you have loans running up to 20, 30 years. So unlike a normal consumer good. Then modern systems, IT infrastructure, all these aspects are not optional in the financial services sector because those are must, those are necessary ingredients. You can't get away with it. So therefore, in simple terms, financial services industry is highly complicated, highly vulnerable, and you have to have a greater level of knowledge, tools, and measures and expertise to handle the risk in financial services, unlike other industries. So that's the end of the presentation. But there are few items in the chapter towards the end. I will touch upon that when I start the next day, but it's there in the note anyway. Any questions or clarifications from today's presentation that you have? Any questions, clarifications? No. So any comments? Probably the way the lecture is conducted, if you want to suggest something, if you want to give any feedback, I can improvise or consider, right? Okay, no response, all good. So with that, I conclude the class for today. And sorry about the technical hiccups in the middle. I will see how far I can improve next time on those things. And we will see next week with the second topic. And good night and stay safe.